The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jennifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Welcome back to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Brian.
And we are here today with a guest. This is Marie Degulis, and she is with Secondwind
Water Systems.
Secondwind Water Systems. And we're going to get real about checking the quality of your water, how that affects when you are purchasing or selling a property. And this is going to be very interesting. I think we might find out a little bit about some of the systems that are in our house that I don't understand at all. So that's very exciting. First, however, how about a glimpse of our realtor life? You know, that famous flexible schedule. What's been keeping you busy, Brian?
Just finished our abatement application today, right on time.
Down to the wire.
I am a procrastinator, so I finished that this morning, but it's ready to go.
Yeah, so we're two procrastinators, and
Exactly.
we produced a procrastinator.
That's
so
true.
We're an entire household full of
That's
procrastinators.
true.
Yeah.
We have an open house this afternoon that we're preparing for. Did a closing yesterday,
Yeah.
so it's all good.
I've been
a good
writing
week.
some offers. We've been doing some market analysis.
Yep, it's been a busy week.
We checked out a facility where we might be able to record some real estate classes. So it's been a busy week.
Yes, it has.
What about you, Marie? What have you been up to?
Preparing for this.
Excellent. We appreciate that.
We are, Secondwind is presenting on an expert panel tomorrow at the Commercial Investment Board of Realtors in Portsmouth at the Keller Williams Coastal Office.
Okay.
And then we are presenting a seminar on reverse osmosis at the New Hampshire Home Show next Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock.
How many people work for Secondwind?
I think we are about 42 now.
Okay. And you do a lot of education, because I know you do a lot of education for the realtor population, right?
Realtors, engineers, we are talking to civil people about water quality and how the effects are against septic systems.
Okay.
Really, water touches everyone, everything, our buildings. We are just trying to open eyes so that people are aware so that they can protect themselves and their assets.
All right, excellent. That's great. Well, then, why don't you just give us a quick overview of water quality in a real estate transaction?
So you folks are in the, I would say, enviable position because most often water quality is an assumed sort of an entity.
Right.
People don't think about it unless they have to. And often because it's not on the top of their mind, but also to, it's boring to people, and why would you want to know what's in there? We are aware from the surface supply end of things. If you are pulling water from Massabesic or Pennachuck Pond, there are issues on a municipal level. And I know in the real estate world where you have a municipally sourced water, you don't necessarily pull that test.
No, we don't.
And yet with the modern issues of recent times, I'd like you guys to understand how to pull the consumer confidence reports, how if you are selling apartments and condominiums, you can look on the DES website and pull up some data on testing and water quality for condos and apartments.
Yep.
If you are a well-driven source, there are other issues like minerals, uranium, arsenic. And again, in a real estate transaction, folks want to know what the water quality is associated with their asset value.
Yeah.
So
I feel that here in New Hampshire, we have quite a bit in the way of minerals.
Yes.
And then when you say words like uranium and arsenic, I think, uh-oh.
We are in New Hampshire, in our region, and that includes Maine and Massachusetts and Vermont as well, receiving the lowest pH water in the country comes down and rains on us at 4.3. And that is mostly as the jet stream pulls the water across the country. It picks up all the industrialized activity, the CO2, and you've all heard of acid rain.
Sure.
Yep.
So when the water hits our surface, whatever is on our surface gets kind of dissolved, and then as it percolates through our granite, that's where those other minerals live, and that is just a function of how we were, developed in the rock ages.
Okay. All right. So if I'm looking at a property with a private water source, a well source, what's the first step?
To testing it?
Yes.
If you are a well source, you want to be able to get somebody in there who knows how to take a sample. And you want to use an alcohol swab. You want to go into your bathroom spigot, make sure that you take 3 or 4 of those swabs and very, very carefully sanitize your source. Bathroom sinks and kitchen sinks are traditionally where people go because it's easy, but that is an area that has a lot of bacterial load on it.
Sure.
So you get a lot of false positives.
Oh, I was wondering why.
Yeah, so if you go in, you've got that large opening on the bath spigot, and that is easy to sterilize, and then you let your water run for about half an hour so that you make sure that you're getting the water that is from the well and not just staying in your column. Because as water sits, things happen to it, so you want to make sure you're getting a true representation of what is in that well. Take the samples carefully. You've got to make sure, especially on your bacteria, that you handle the bottles a certain way so you don't create the false positive. You fill your bottles, take them to the lab. Sure. We have lots of options for testing. You've got a standard analysis that goes over basics. You've got your bacteria, your lead and copper and nitrates. If you wish to add arsenic, you can to a standard. You also, in the comprehensive package, are looking at those same items, but in a broader view. You add alkalinity to it. You add, again, if you want radon, the pH is one of those things. It's always part of the testing protocol, and yet when we get a call, ring-a-ling, we need you to come out and take a peek, we always check pH in the field because pH is a factor of how much CO2 is in the water, and between the sample being taken possibly by a home inspector and getting it to the lab, that is an outgas situation, so your pH alters.
Oh.
So we need to get a very accurate read on pH because it indicates for those things that are dissolved in the water how readily they will be removed by certain technologies.
And that's included in a standard test, the pH level?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. pH and then something called TDS, total dissolved solids.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we really want to get a read on how much stuff is in the water.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can look at a lab analysis and identify the things that are in there, and sometimes you've got an enormous amount of total dissolved solids and it is not explained. So what happens on the high TDS houses, when you ionize things, there's an electrical charge between the pieces, and that creates a corrosive situation under certain circumstances. So it's just interesting to understand.
And so corrosive means hard on the pipes.
Corrosive means that it is hungry water. So it touches things and it pulls metals, essentially, and makes holes in plumbing or takes out the inside of a hot water tank or...
And also, is that when you will see the discoloration in your tubs and your showers and your toilets, or is that more the iron and the manganese?
Iron and manganese are your stainers. Oftentimes they come with stink too. The corrosion issues are more of a low pH. Sometimes you can get corrosive water because the lower the pH goes, the hungrier that water is.
So how would that affect PEX?
A PEX still has metallic components in it.
Sure.
And as we're not analyzing for plastics, it's to be determined what the plastic component would be added to the water.
Right. PEX, it scares me just like all plastics do. So
we don't like it because it's very flimsy and it makes the install a lot less rugged.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I like it because it looks like it's easy to deal with, and
it comes in.
Is that why?
It comes in pretty color.
And that's why the plumbers charge us less to install the PEX.
Plumbers are worth every penny. Believe me. So let's just talk about the different categories of things that you test for, because there are bacteria that you test for that's water you should not drink. Potable, right?
The definition of potable means absence of bacteria.
Oh, all right.
It does not mean that you can drink the water.
Okay, so I was wrong about that.
I learned
And
something.
have been for years.
There you go.
Yeah.
So potable water can be absent of bacteria, but still be laden with minerals like uranium and arsenic.
Okay.
So that I'm glad we got to the bottom of that.
Okay, good.
And we do test for coliform bacteria, which is actually a litmus test. And if it's positive for coliform, then we test the E. coli. That's what the
Okay.
lab does.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yep.
because E. coli is a very dangerous coliform-shaped bacteria. There are hundreds of coliform bacterias, but they will do a litmus test essentially and find out if you've got any colonies, and then if it's present, then we go ahead and test the E. coli.
So should I only drink vodka?
I was thinking wine isn't even cooked. So, I mean, I know. Bacteria is a fact of life. It comes from all sorts of different places. In dug wells, you very often will have bacteria
Right.
because that dug well is exposed to the surface of the earth.
There's no liner; it's not protected.
And whatever gets in there, it gets in there. You'll usually see that, so we can do a well disinfection and clear the slate. But it's not a permanent fix, and you always have to be aware so that you can put technology in the event that the bacteria gets in there. The other thing that we look for are the dissolved organics or inorganics that are in the water.
Okay.
And your inorganics would be things like your herbicides or your runoffs, your industrial discharges, and things like that.
All right. Yeah.
Your organics are your volatiles. Actually, I think I just got that backwards. The inorganics are your arsenic, your uranium, things like that. And then the organics are volatile components that...
So, and your arsenic and your uranium are naturally occurring, are they
Yes.
not?
Yeah, they live in the bedrock.
Okay. And I bring this up
Most of the time.
just because arsenic is used in murder mysteries and uranium is used in spy movies. And so, yeah.
There definitely are situations where there is industrial arsenic in, especially a situation like a dug well if you're near farming activities. And I don't even know if they still use arsenated pesticides. But again, any water supply.
I would hope not. But
Right.
Surface supplies generally you won't find that unless it's an industrial source, because again, living in the bedrock as that low pH water percolates through the rock, that's how the arsenic comes into the well column.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know how many or what percentage of homes in New Hampshire are serviced by private well sources?
About 60%.
I figured you would know that. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually,
not as high as I would have expected.
No, it's actually 60% are municipal and about 40% are well sourced.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would call it 50-50.
Yeah.
Um,
In our
Well,
experience, the majority of the homes that we sell are on private systems, but I'm sure there are a lot of apartments and businesses and that sort of thing in the cities that get the municipal
The
services.
highest populated areas, so that
In the
makes
highest
sense, yeah.
populated areas, of course, yeah.
Municipal water does serve populated areas. However, there are a lot, 1,800 of them in the state, public water systems, which are entities that service more than 25 people, more than 15 service connections, and open over 60 days a year, that are well served.
So, for example, like a Pennachuck, somebody lives in a neighborhood where there's a community well and Pennachuck manages it.
Pennachuck would then be the water operator.
The operator, okay.
The well source is there on the property, but when you have a community system, you need to have a water operator maintain the regulatory compliance testing.
And
Including the
how
testing.
often are they required to test the water in those situations?
Depends on what the water system presents as. So what
Okay.
the raw water looks like. If you've got bacteria that continues to show its head, then you're going to be testing for bacteria on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Things like the pesticides, herbicides, those are, I think, on a 1 every 3-year cycle.
Okay.
And in public water systems, I just learned this year that they test for cyanide on a 9-year cycle because cyanide is part of road salt. And oftentimes a road salt can get into water supplies. So
I did not know any of this.
I learn something new every day with doing what I do.
Yeah. I did know how to look up the CCRs, even though I didn't know that that's what they were called, because we have sold properties that are part of a condo association or homeowners association that has a community well. And so I've gone and pulled whatever the most recent tests were. But it's a mystery to me what they're required to test for and what they don't need to test for versus what I might choose to test for myself.
Exactly.
Yes.
And honest to Pete, testing for something doesn't even tell you everything that's in the water. So you want to test a water supply to make sure that it's not going to be damaging to your home.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the consumable end of things, there are things in the water that could be dangerous to us that we might not even know. So I am a huge advocate of protecting the consumable water in a house.
Yeah.
Things like PFAS are of recent times, something that we have to pay attention to. And down the pipe, we're going to be looking at, 1,4-dioxane and perchlorates and some other things. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'm drinking vodka.
All very scary.
Yeah.
It's not scary if you know what's there, because then you can make the choice.
Okay.
The thing is to get people to understand the nature of water, which it's a universal solvent. So given time, sitting against any surface, it's going to absorb some.
It's going to pull in.
And then you think
Yeah.
of the hydrological cycle. The water comes up where it is, and the winds take it, and it comes down elsewhere, and it brings with it certain things. And the low pH happens to be what we have in this region as a big driver of water quality.
Does the low pH make it absorb more stuff?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But I use the term hungry.
Hungry.
Or aggressive.
Yes,
the
I like
lower
that
the
term,
pH,
yeah.
and it just gets, agitated,
Mhm.
and it wants to dissolve to reach that neutral 7 pH.
We're going to do actually a separate episode about PFAS, uranium, and arsenic. But I just wanted to mention that PFAS is in the news right now because it's been showing up in our groundwater in several different communities in New Hampshire, and that was from industrial waste, and it's a type of plastic.
It is what they call a surfactant,
Okay.
which is a chemical that's a fluorinated compound that is designed to have anything and everything slip off of it. So your Scotch guards, your carpet, your stain masters, the inside of food wrappers, your Teflon pans.
Your Teflon
yeah,
pans,
exactly.
Brian got rid of all my Teflon
He
pans.
told me. Good for you.
And I was unhappy for a couple of years.
And so was
then-
our daughter.
And then I found out, and then I really found out why. And then I turned
And you said,
around.
of course, you're right.
And then I said, of course, I did. I said that. Did you record it?
No, I didn't, unfortunately. but
I can.
you just admitted it, so.
I can write
Tell
it.
all your friends.
I can write it and sign it and frame it if you'd like, because you were 100% right.
That's right.
I think I might have even gone out and bought one after you got rid of them all.
I think you may have.
I think I
and
may
I probably
have.
threw that one out,
You
too.
probably did too. Luckily, I'm not the cook, so.
Well, it's probably too late for us anyway, but
Yeah.
There are two movies, Dark Waters
Mm-hmm.
and The Devil That We Know, and anybody who doesn't understand anything about the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances probably should watch one or both of those. They are kind of scary because they're obviously created for TV and,
Of course,
and a little
yeah.
dramatic, but this whole PFAS business, it is everywhere, and it's in 99% of our bodies
I believe that.
in various levels. But
Right.
these movies just kind of, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you say, what do you do? Because once it gets in there, the half-life is so long, it's not going to really, like you say, we're all done for here. But life's 100% fatal. No one gets out alive. That kind
live
of
for
thing.
today.
And so
Exactly. Be
that's why we're glad to have you here, because
Thank you.
what do we do?
Protect your consumable water.
Okay.
At this point, the fact that it has been identified in our New Hampshire water is step number one.
Mhm.
The DES does a good job in protecting public health and getting, like a rabid dog on things. Where is it coming from and why? They found a lot of emitters. There's actually a hot spot in Amherst over by TCI.
Mhm.
They then have a national account because they're national polluters, and they can provide equipment in here. But for everybody else who knows how pervasive it is, we just need to protect our drinking water.
Yeah.
And by that, I just reverse osmosis is the most robust removal system of anything that would get in there. And you need peace of mind.
Sure.
We got enough on our minds. We don't have to worry about that every day.
So we had reverse osmosis in our house, which I really didn't want. And then we had it, and then we took it out.
Mhm.
So one of the drawbacks, there were two drawbacks for me. One was it didn't taste as good as the spring water. And then the second was it caused the water pressure on our ice maker and our refrigerator to be lower, Brian.
Well, I just think our water tastes fine. It's always tasted good to me.
I like that crisp taste that you get of spring water.
Okay. I don't see it, but
Well, a lot of the times that crispness can come from temperature. So with reverse osmosis, the reason you're feeling it a little bit flat on your tongue is because there is no mineral content.
Right.
So that's what reverse osmosis does, is it removes the total dissolved content. So what we say is, number one, get used to it. But number two, take it, put it in a pitcher, put it in the refrigerator, and you'll get back some of that pleasing palate feel.
Okay.
Secondly, though, the pressure issue was one we ran into when we were connecting the refrigerators, the front serve as well as the ice makers, and we just adjusted the pressure on the line and fixed it.
Oh, it's that easy, huh?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You just have to be aware of it and patient.
Okay.
My plumber didn't offer that solution, so
Plumbers understand water in, water out really well.
okay.
The chemistry of what happens inside the tanks and inside the units, that's a little lost to most of them.
So, what is reverse osmosis?
Reverse osmosis is the technology, bring you right back to 6th grade science, where if you put a membrane between unequal solutions, over time, the concentrations on each side will correct. In other words,
They'll level out.
they'll level out and they'll even out.
Yeah.
Reverse osmosis takes a little bit of pressure and puts it on the side that has a lot of the concentrated TDS in it, and it actually rejects the TDS, so only H's and O's go to the other side.
And TDS is total dissolved
Solids.
solids. Thank
Stuff
you.
that's dissolved in there.
Okay.
And depending upon what those solids are, it identifies whether the system is capable of rejecting it at a higher rate or a lower rate.
So I had always imagined, I don't want to give false information, but I had always imagined it was sort of like you were boiling the water and collecting collecting the oxygen and the hydrogen and then leaving the solids behind.
That is a technology called distillation.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
And that is when you make alcohol. Back to the alcohol.
Getting back to only drink vodka.
A subject I understand.
Yeah. So that used to be an application that we would put in residential applications. But what happens is the homeowner is ill-equipped to deal with what the salts are that are left behind.
Right.
And very often you're using a distillation process to remove nasties in the water. And what you end up with is arsenated salts or uranium salts or whatever it is, and then you have to dispose of them, and then they can become, possibly airborne, and the homeowners are just not thinking that way, and they're not equipped
Well,
for
that just goes with the motor oil in the yard, right?
And the paint. Oh dear.
Education and awareness is a powerful thing, seriously. So that's why reverse osmosis works so well, because while you have one feed stream of water that comes in, you've got two that go out. So that pressure against the membrane makes a permeate water that goes through the membrane, and that's the water you consume.
Yep.
And then it makes a concentrate water that goes out to drain with everything else. So all the minerals and the bad stuff goes out back where it came from in the yard.
All right. So in addition to reverse osmosis, what type of filtration are you most commonly using to treat?
To treat what?
To treat well water in
So,
New Hampshire and Massachusetts.
Generally, when water hits the house, everybody needs a cartridge filter minimally to remove the solids.
Right.
That makes
We
sense.
get sand, black mystery, solids, you've got mica, you've got all sorts of things. And it's
Sure.
amazing once you start trapping it, you could see it. It's a science project.
And we see that in the majority of homes, even if they
Cartridge
don't have any
filters.
other. Yeah.
They're usually black or brown. But
Well,
we do
and
see
The
them.
cartridges are usually, yes, very full.
Water treatment is just this thing where people put it in there. It's in the basement. They
You
set it
forget
and
about
forget
it.
it, like the
Yeah.
boiler. And this is not the case. Water treatment needs attention. Cartridge filters should be sized for the flow and for changing out every 3 to 4 months. And every time you open it up, you put a new one in. You put a little dab of bleach in there, because when you open it up, you've got ambient bacteria in the basement.
All right. Okay.
Because sometimes you can get a bacteria hit when you change a cartridge filter and you don't think about it, and then you
I
end
didn't
up with
even consider that.
Me either. Yeah. The houses I walk into where they have really organized homeowners, this is a tip that I will steal from them, is they'll have the new cartridges there, and they'll just have taken a Sharpie and written the month and the year on them so that they know when to put them in.
And also, it's nice to have the medium, whatever is in that tank, on there too, because sometimes you don't know.
Well, and then I was going to comment, if you're beyond a cartridge filter and you have so much stuff, and by the way, a way to identify how much of that you have is go to your toilet. take the tank off, see what's in the bottom of the tank, because those solids that go in there accumulate, and you can get an idea of what they look like.
Sure.
If you've got orange, like sludgy muck in there, you've got what they call ferric iron, and that needs to be definitely taken out.
We got iron and manganese, I can tell you that.
I have no idea when the last time I took the top off the back of the toilet.
Why would you?
Well, because
I have a cleaning lady and I have a husband.
when you go to list a house or to buy a house, have a buyer go through, look in the tank, because when you look in there, you see what's going on with the water. And then I've got news for you. Take your hand and rub it up the inside of the porcelain. And if your porcelain has a gelatinous sort of a surface on it, that is indicative of a little bit of bacteria in
We can hire somebody for that, right?
I already touch everything when I'm in a home. I'm very tactile. So if I want to know what the windows or the floors or the counters are, I'm always touching.
All right, he has a new job for
I don't
you.
think I'm going to I don't think I'm going to be walking into houses and sticking my hand in the back.
It's clean water.
Okay.
It's clean water.
You're correct. Yep.
And
there will be a sink nearby.
And there'll be a sink for
after.
washing. It's just a matter of identifying what's in there, because when your buyer or your seller passes through the negotiation portion, if they've got a larger issue, you want to be able to offer the opportunity for them to use, the negotiation process to mitigate that.
Sure.
All right. So let's back up, because my mind had wandered there. So if I do feel a gelatinous,
Yes.
What does that mean?
It is generally referred to as a bioslime. And if there is,
That's my band
Wait a
name.
minute, that's not the water softener?
No. We actually had a cartridge filter. We were in a home the other day and we changed it, and we went to go, the suction and pulled it out, and it was like nose run, boogers, whatever you want to call it, snot. And we are geeks, yes. Look at this, it's cool. And we took pictures of it, brought it back to the office. But in the event that it happens to be something we call iron bacteria, which is a bacteria in the water that consumes iron, and then the iron gets in the gelatinous body, so water treatment will not remove it. So if you have it, you've got to know you've got it, so that you can make sure that your treatment accommodates
Using the right
for
system,
it.
yeah.
Because otherwise, guess what? That kind of stuff lives where it's wet, dark, and warm.
Oh, yeah.
So inside softeners, inside filtration systems,
pressure tanks.
Everywhere it is, it's going to live, and it blinds off the treatment, and it farts in the plumbing. So sometimes when you open the faucet, especially in the farther reaches of a home that don't get used as much, that gas, when they consume the iron, it builds up, and it smells like rotten eggs, kind of like hydrogen sulfur.
That's sulfur.
Kind of, yeah.
You just mentioned softener. So we have a softener. I see a lot of homes that have softeners. Tell me about softeners.
Softeners are a technology that removed dissolved ions. So that would be your hardness, your ferrous iron, which is your dissolved iron, and your manganese and your magnesium.
Oh, I didn't realize they helped with that.
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was just the hard water strictly.
No.
Okay.
No, but then you can, I can dive deeper and talk about the technologies. When you have a single tank electric, that system is very good at removing hardness all day long. If you've got a lot of iron, you really want to use a twin tank electric, because non-electric, because you can use, your regen is absolutely on demand. Okay. Where the other system doesn't often regen at the exact time it needs to.
Yeah, it's only doing it 2 or 3 days or whatever. Yeah.
And
ours does it at like 2 a.m, right?
Yeah, every second or third day, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's been a calculation identified by somebody in the know as to what is in the water.
Yeah, me and my buddy.
What's in the water, and
so the
how
percentages of this being accurate are not good.
Well. You live and learn.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Hopefully.
You have to calculate that regeneration and the backwashing for the salt to undo what the softener has been doing. But it's based on how much water you're using. Okay. The same system with the same components. If you're using half the water, that affects the regen cycle. And the salt that is used in the brine tank is an agent to, as I say, reverse it. So when the system is in use, it's precharged with sodium. So as that water goes through, all those positive ions go to the resin, and the sodium pops into the water stream.
Okay.
And the reason they use that is because sodium doesn't plate out in heat. Okay.
Yep.
So the salt comes in, it's hypersalinated. You should have water only touching the bottom, foot or so of the salt in the bin.
Yep.
And then that goes in there and it regenerates and puts sodium back on the beads, and it pushes all that's on the beads, because it's salinated, back into the stream, and that goes out to waste. So that's
And that's when it's
generally how that works.
backwashing.
That's when it's backwashing.
Okay, that's very, very interesting.
One
yep.
more question before we move. And where should the backwashing of the
Interesting. You should
salts
ask.
go?
Yes.
It's a big controversial discussion.
I know it is, yes.
I know.
And the good news is the Granite State designers and septic designers and installers have engaged Secondwind in this discussion, because we, by our certification and code in New Hampshire, must put the waste out to the main waste, which is the leach field.
Which we're not. Which
No,
is
so
not
you're saying
ideal.
that's what we should be doing?
No,
Well,
that's what she has
that's
to
what
do.
we install, unless we have the conversation.
sure,
but
yeah.
again, it depends what you're putting out there. I would not take a precipitated iron and manganese flow and put that out into your leach field.
Right.
Number one, solids don't do well in the leach field, and in that distribution tank, they're supposed to settle to the bottom and stay there until they get pumped.
Sure.
But when you've got a backwashing filter that feeds into that main waste, the velocity of the water coming in and hitting the side of that tank goes right down, and it stirs, and then you lose your striation.
In your septic tank.
In your distribution tank.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then you get solids that go
Yep.
out into the field. So
Yep.
there's something called NAWRA, the National Organization of Wastewater Reclamation Association, and the WQA, which is our licensing body, did this study, and I'd be happy to provide the executive summary that says actually softeners in their activity actually help the septic system. They change, but that's not solids. So
Right.
filtration,
Right.
Yep.
we're getting creative.
Right.
We're going to the French drains, or
Yep.
we're going to daylight, or,
Yep.
if you've got a builder with a new house, we say dig a 4x4x4 with drainage gravel, and we'll feed and a perf pipe, and we'll meet that.
Yeah. So we used to call those dry wells. I don't know if we still do, but I've always wanted one for my waste from our treatment. But everything goes into our septic, correct, Brian?
It does.
Yeah.
Actually, we had it going. We installed it just going out
To the ground.
to the window in the ground out under our mud room.
Yeah.
But when we had to switch the tanks over because we put them in the wrong order, the plumber
Hire a
and the
professional.
plumber came in and he put it back into our septic system because he said that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So
By
I said,
code, right?
And I said,
Yeah.
well, that's not what I've heard. And we had a discussion, but ultimately I let him do that. So now we're back to putting everything back into the septic system.
I don't like putting it in the septic system, but I feel like I have to get a permit and a design if I'm going to do something different. No.
No, I don't
Thank
think you do.
All
No.
right.
You and I need to chat about that filter.
Sure.
We really do, because the design of what you've got there is it's a catalytic media that changes the dissolved into solids. So you are actually taking something that we would remove as a dissolved particle,
Sure.
manganese, making it solid. So then you're putting solids out into your distribution tank.
Yeah, probably not a good thing.
And so
I
you're
don't-
saying you have a treatment where you could put that out as a concentrated liquid instead.
We just change the size of the softener, and it takes care of it.
Oh, I like
Oh.
her. Okay. Yep.
It's efficiency.
Okay.
There's no sense when you put combination systems in play where you've got a water and it needs to do something and then it needs to do something else. It's challenging, and it doesn't always work as well as concept says it might.
Right. Right.
So we like to say, let's let the softener, which is a tried and true, and especially we have a Kinetico line, which is top of the line, non-electric, and they're very efficient and 100% on demand, so that all of the stuff that hits it, we readily treat it, and it doesn't ever have a problem, an issue building up.
Okay.
So how is it non-electric?
It works on the hydraulics and the kinetics of the water.
Really?
So as long as your water is moving, it's, those puzzle rings that we used to have. This head is just like a puzzle ring. There's like 4 or 5 or 6 layers,
Okay.
impellers and pawls, and the water moves through. And as long as that water moves, the thing spins like a clock,
Okay.
and it opens and closes valves. So we
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we could go down and talk about
Sure.
the brine draw and the cup and the valves and the
Yeah.
foot valves and
Yeah.
things like that. But generally, it's a non-electric. We set the mechanics, and the water flows. And when those mechanical parameters are hit, the actions that
This
we want
is
it to.
very interesting. So, I'd like to talk a little bit more about our system, and then talk a little bit about buyers and sellers and their different considerations in a real estate transaction. After we check in with Brian Frost for How's the Market, which is sponsored by Real Value Appraisal.
Sure. Everybody's asking me, how is the market?
Well,
Are we?
who else are they going to ask?
Yeah, exactly. When's it going to crash? Is
Yeah.
also
I've been
I
hearing
get
that
asked all the
too.
time,
Yeah.
and I really don't see that happening. Right now, prices are still rising, but they're rising slowly.
Mhm.
In 2019, overall, home prices grew at 3.3% for the year. 2018, it was 5%. Gurus are expecting that home prices will rise by about 2.8% in 2020.
I feel like the
And that's a Freddie Mac forecast.
Freddie Mac forecast. I feel like the idea of the market is going to shift is just because we have been in a boom market for so long.
Very, very long time.
Is it 10, 11 years?
This is one of the longest cycles. This is my fourth cycle.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Yeah, this is the longest cycle I can remember.
Yeah, and so, because of that, I'm getting the feeling like, oh, this is going to change. What goes up must come down, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't see that we have the inventory. I don't see that we've absorbed the demand of the millennials because the millennials have not purchased as much as previous generations. And the
interest rates are still very low.
Exactly. And the baby boomers have not been moving as frequently either. So I feel like there's pent up demand and there's pent up supply.
I mean,
But I don't have a crystal ball.
We'll undoubtedly get a correction of some sort. I just don't think we're going to see anything like we did back in the 2007 to 2011 range.
Where can I knock on wood in this studio?
Yeah.
Say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, that would increase inventory.
It's true. It's true. We would solve a problem.
Not necessarily
for sure.
in a good way, but
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm still seeing.
Yes, and if we had a crystal ball, like you said, we would not be in this business. I'd probably be in Vegas or something.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I can do that in New Hampshire now, right?
You can do that in New Hampshire now with the sports betting. Yeah, the inventory is still low. We're still seeing multiple offers. I am not seeing as much craziness in the pricing and in the bidding. It is getting a little bit more stable and more reasonable.
I don't know. I've been doing the last two appraisals I did were quite surprising.
Where you were looking at list price versus sales price?
Just what these properties were actually selling for was surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, it's happening every day in front of me, but until you actually go out there and do an appraisal
and when I started in 1986, I vividly remember average sales price was like 160, 165.
Right.
New construction was 200,000, and now I'm seeing condos for 400,000.
Right. So we're at record highs now. So we've surpassed whatever we lost. I mean, it took a long time,
right?
But we're actually back to that, or even higher than we were back in 2006 at the height of the market.
At the height of the market, yeah. So I guess that's 14 years since that low.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Brian. All right. So Marie, what would you recommend for our system? First, I'm going to start with Brian. What do we have? We have like 3 or 4 different things down there.
Ours is a very basic system.
Yeah.
We have a berm green sand type of filter that I believe filters out manganese and iron and some of the solids we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That goes into a water softener. I'm giving you the flow order here.
Okay. Yeah.
So that goes into a water softener. And then finally it goes through, from what I know now, an insufficient arsenic filter.
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian.
And that's okay.
And then from there, it used to go to the reverse osmosis, but we don't have the reverse osmosis
we actually took
anymore?
out the RO before we installed this system.
Okay.
So we used to have an RO that
that's short for reverse osmosis.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. That worked well for, I don't know, probably about a year, and then we hooked it up to our refrigerator ice maker, and the flow was not sufficient, so it would clog up and freeze. So, and like you said, you didn't like the taste of it, or so.
Right.
So we removed it, or I removed it. So
Okay.
I made a decision.
Which I didn't even know till after I spoke to
Need
Marie.
to know
but
basis.
Anyway, need to know basis. Yeah.
It's probably for your own good, like the Teflon pans.
Exactly.
Hey,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
exactly.
See?
I had such a hissy fit about those pans, and now you were right. You were right.
Oh, twice in one episode.
So what I would say, you
Sure.
sent me the pictures, and because all the equipment was right there, I could not identify the flow. So I was hoping that that little cartridge filter that you had for the arsenic was just feeding your kitchen cold.
Yeah,
And it
unfortunately
wasn't.
not.
So that is the number one, that the capacity of that removal system, and I don't know how much arsenic
Come on, they
you
call it
have.
a big blue.
It's a big blue. It's a 10, and we do a lot of different things
Right.
with the big blue. But
Sure.
to put that kind of a cartridge in there when you're serving all the water that goes
Insufficient.
to, it just is maximized, which means
It
it's
might as
not
well
doing
not
its
even
job.
be there.
And,
Right.
and I really
Okay.
don't care about having it in my shower or
Nobody-
my toilet,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Good. I
or
was
the
just about to buy
dishwasher or
another
the-
filter for
Okay.
it, so I just
Yeah.
saved $100
So
bucks.
we should just have that go to the kitchen sink.
Yeah, and the kitchen cold.
Kitchen cold.
Kitchen cold. You don't ever
Okay.
want to drink hot water. And you don't want to take any water for consuming out of your hot tap.
Which I don't. So that's
Okay,
good.
so
okay.
good. Now,
And you don't want to use the microwave, I'm sure.
and the
either.
microwave has other issues of its own. Exactly. Not my expertise, I would say.
Okay.
But that backwashing filter is interesting because in New Hampshire, the water, the pH that we have generally keeps manganese in a dissolved state. So manganese doesn't like to precipitate out until about 8.5, sometimes a little higher on the pH scale. So it's dissolved when it hits that media.
So you're saying the water softener should take care of the manganese?
If your water softener is set to the capacity it needs to be set, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yes.
all right.
Now, I don't know how
But what
many-
about iron?
Well, I don't know what kind of iron, and I don't
Yeah.
know how many solids you have, but
Sure.
but
we have to
the-
find our test, or we'll do a new test.
I was going to say I'd
We'll just
start
do a new-
fresh
Yeah, we'll
because your
start
water
fresh.
does change.
Yeah.
But the nature of that berm green sand is it's a catalytic media. So when that water and the manganese comes in as a dissolved component, it forces it or tries to force it to precipitate, which is why then it needs to backwash.
Which brings up a question for me. How often should you have your water tested?
If you are on a well and you don't see heavy equipment or new neighborhoods, or you're living off in the quiet someplace, every 3 to 5 years is good. If you've got a lot of development around you, or hey, there was a little bit of a geologic event that happened in Maine, you might want to test it, because even the heavy equipment on the roads or the blasting or the digging, 93,
Yeah.
can change up and resource the water that hits your column, and it can be 100% different. I had a client in Bedford, and she wasn't getting enough water, so they hydrofracted, and she
Oh boy.
didn't any longer have any radon. So
Interesting.
that's how fascinating that is. I
Wow.
learned something new that day.
I figured it
Wow.
must have got worse, but
I
it got
thought no,
better.
got better.
Sometimes you close off where it's coming from, and you can open up more
Interesting.
flow.
That's
That is
my
interesting.
glass half full attitude.
There
I
you
just
go.
assumed it was going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for somebody who's going to sell their home, one of the things that I recommend is that they do actually do a water test before they put their house on the market.
Good idea.
Just
Makes sense.
because it's
Good
a
idea.
lab test, it's kind of be black and white. It's not going to change. And if you need to go in and do some filtration, some treatment, some mitigation, it would be better to know that and know the cost of it in the beginning rather than at the end.
It puts you in a better bargaining position,
Mm-hmm.
and depending upon who you are, you might want it for yourself while you're staying in the house right there.
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
sometimes those issues that arise are like, I didn't even know it was here.
Right.
And that has happened down, well, to us a lot of times. We see that a lot with arsenic.
Sure.
Yeah.
People don't even know. They find out, we have 324 parts and we've been living here for 24 years.
Yeah.
And that's a hit to the heart, and you go, what the heck? And what does that mean long term?
We did not have it test in our water when we purchased the house 15 years ago. And,
We did. We tested.
well, no, but arsenic didn't come up.
We didn't have arsenic at that
Right.
time. Correct.
So
yeah.
when I did the well test prior to installing this system, it popped up.
The other deal with arsenic is that the standard change has
right.
occurred.
Sure.
Okay.
So it used to be a much higher standard than it used to be 50 parts.
Oh.
Now it's 10, so you might have been under
So
the
we
50
might,
threshold.
we might have had it. It just
Right.
didn't
not been
exceed
aware.
it. Okay.
Okay.
Not needed to mitigate. Hey, I got a
Right.
little arsenic, no big deal.
Yep.
But the longer time has moved on, the more they've learned about arsenic and how it behaves, and the fact that it is a Class A carcinogen. It directly causes certain kinds of cancer. But the thing with arsenic in your water is it distracts your DNA. And it distracts your immune system because your immune system has to focus on it all the time. And while it's focusing on dealing with this low-level arsenic,
It's not-
other things are happening. Your cardiovascular, your diabetes, certain
Okay.
other kinds of cancer. It's
right.
called an accumulative enabler.
Interesting. I did not know that. Did not know that. And then for buyers, of course, we generally recommend that when they make an offer on a property and they put in their inspection clause that they're also going to test for water.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never really sure how to guide them on what tests to ask for, other than I know that a lot of the packages don't include arsenic and radon, and I recommend that they add those in.
I am most comfortable with the comprehensive.
Yep.
Just because it addresses from a lab standpoint the widest range of parameters.
Mm-hmm.
When Secondwind comes to your home, we come with our handy D&D lab kit and we can test all those parameters, not the health issues, because you need EPA methodology to do your uranium and your arsenic.
Okay.
Can't do that in the field. But when we come to the house, we would like to see a lab analysis, and therefore our lab kit confirms what we see.
Okay.
So we don't, I mean, a lot of people don't understand water treatment and smoke and mirrors and whatever, and because they don't understand it, have a basis to even, think or understand how their money is being spent, we want them to be very clear and comfortable with us to know that, yeah, what we're finding here is exactly here or not. Then you have, do you want to treat every bit of the water for what it is you find? And when you have health issues that arise, like we were just saying with the arsenic, your laundry, your dishwasher,
They don't care.
washing the floor, whatever.
Yeah.
Your domestic water doesn't really matter if you've got a little bit of those things in. So for cost reasons, if you put a reverse osmosis system in, you can rid your consumable water. And, guess what? If you've got a new house with open walls, we can bring those lines and bring that good water to the bathrooms too.
Okay.
So it depends on what you've got, but we really like people to think in terms of treating the consumable water from a cost standpoint, but also too from a management issue. You've got this room full of equipment down there. By the way, it all needs annual maintenance, right? If you're treating for a health issue, you need to maintain.
Which we didn't know until we'd been in our house for about 6 years. I didn't know it needed annual maintenance. Yeah.
Now you do.
Now we do.
No comment.
Live and learn, right?
Live and learn. We knew we had to put salt in the tank, and by we, I've never touched the tank or a bag of salt.
Salt is the basics.
Yeah.
But if you've got a power outage,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know your clock isn't, off? You've got to be able to go down and make sure your clock's
As long as it's in the middle of the night, that's all I care about.
as long as it's working.
Well,
Yeah.
right.
And sometimes we go into homes and they go, yeah, it was too much for me, and they put it in bypass, and
Oh, we
you
see
don't even
that
know
all
it's
the
off.
we
time.
do
So,
see that.
because
We
it
do
gets
see that.
overwhelming, and they
Sure.
they don't believe that it's doing anything because they can't see what it's doing anyway.
Right.
Right. And having a softener, I will know if we need salt. I can feel it just
bet
when I'm
you do.
washing my hands.
Certainly.
I can definitely tell in my
And then
hair.
I know when to change it.
And then he knows. And when we go away and we're at a hotel and we're using what is probably some sort of city water, my hair hates it.
Mine does too.
Hates the non-softened water. So it's adapted somehow.
In a municipal system, in addition to the minerals, which, by the way, we haven't even discussed the EPA primary versus the secondaries, but your primary standards are those health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And on municipalities and public water systems, those need to be removed or brought down to the compliance levels. Private wells are 100% unregulated. In the municipal water, you also have the addition of disinfectants. So you've got your chlorine and
Right.
your chloramine, and then those disinfectant byproducts. So
Right.
there's a lot of, and again, knowing what I know, I'm hyper aware of all of it, but disinfectants are harsh on your hair. They're harsh on your house's gaskets. Anything
sure.
that touches,
Oh, right. Yep.
everything dries out, and your skin gets dry, and the disinfectants are there to manage the bugs that live in the infrastructure. and those are dangerous to the public health.
Yeah.
So we have to have what we have.
Right.
And again, there are a lot of issues depending upon what kind of water gets hit and how, whatever. But
yeah, and I think that actually kind of sums it up, is it's all very individual.
yes, it is.
And so the best thing that we can do is have people go to secondwindwater.com and get an evaluation. And if you have a public water source or a community well, you might still also want to test, because there could be some things that the state is not making them test for, but that could affect either the odor, the staining, the taste, right?
Yeah, and municipal water can always be improved for dollar signs.
Right.
So you ring-a-ling your local town official and your water department and say, I am not happy. They say, would you like to pay more taxes? And of course the answer is no. So we as individuals in our houses need to set our own standards of what we need to do and then deal with it as it arrives there.
Right. Right. Well, I really thank you, Marie, for this
welcome.
valuable
Thank you.
information.
You're welcome.
And we're grateful to Ed, our producer, and Dave, who provides the framework for the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We hope you enjoyed this opportunity to get real about real estate. Please like, subscribe, and share Spouses Talking Houses with your friends, family, neighbors, and that weird guy in line at the coffee shop. If you like the show, we'd be grateful if you left us a review. We listen to your feedback, and reviews help others find the podcast. Take care.
Music courtesy of the Eric Lindbergh Trio. Please visit his website at www.ericlindberghworld.com. Jennifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The Realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jennifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.